is the results at the pump?
You know, it just depends on how successful he is in convincing voters that he's actually trying to do something and is able to actually make some impact. He can't just claim he's helping you at the pump and the pump doesn't change, right?
Yeah.
American voters are smart enough to know what the price of gas is every week now. It's everywhere, and people call you all the time. Hey, I drove by a gas station and it's on $6 now. I mean, like, that is a real possibility of leading us all the way into the midterm. So he's actually got to make progress, and I think all these things that Congressman Kildee talked about were great, and I think that this announcement to hit the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is great, but, like, why hasn't he called in oil producers in the United States, quit going over to Venezuela and talking to those despots, and say, pump more? I mean, I really think that there's no logic to him not meeting with oil executives and asking for more on their half.
Well, that brings us to this use it or lose it policy. I want to ask you guys about this. We've talked about this on the program before. The president likes to refer to this 9,000 number, 9,000 oil drilling leases that are not being used. That they say the oil companies are sitting on them. He wants this to stop.
I'm calling for a use it or lose it policy. Congress should make companies pay fees on wells on federal leases they haven't used in years, and acres of public land they're hoarding without production. Companies that are already producing from these wells won't be affected, but those sitting on unused leases and idle wells will either have to start producing or pay the price for their inaction.
So the worry here is, by the way, I'd like to know, Jeannie, if you think it's a good idea, because the worry is the critics are saying in the industry that oil companies will just say to hell with it then, and they'll stop drilling. They won't hold these leases.
That's right. And you know, I think we see a lot of blame being spewed out there by the Biden administration, blaming Putin, blaming the oil companies. But, you know, the reality of this is just having a permit is not the only issue when it comes to production. A lot of other issues are at stake. One of the big ones, and your clip by Nancy Pelosi speaks to this, is you've got companies who are afraid they're going to invest in this now and yet politically be hit by Green New Deal legislation.
Is that what she's saying, though?
Well, I don't think she's saying that. I think they are thinking that, and until I think they hear from the president that if they go out and they drill the way he wants them to or says he wants them, they're not going to be hit on the back end in a couple years, 2 or 5 years later, by some new legislation and some new taxation. And this is the trap Joe Biden is in between the progressives and the political reality here. And I think Nancy Pelosi talking about it is something that, you know, he probably doesn't want her to talk about publicly, but that's the reality of her, you know, her entire caucus over there.
Yeah, I thought it was an important moment in her briefing today, Rick. I'm just not sure exactly what she's talking about. We're not going to let oil companies take advantage of this moment. The Democratic president is asking them to pump more.
Yeah, she is trying to have it both ways. I mean, you know, and that's why it doesn't make any sense, because you can't say out of one side of your mouth, hey, the oil companies are hurting the American public. They're partially to blame because they're not pumping enough oil, and that's why your gas prices are so high. And then say right out of the other left side of her mouth that, you know, all of a sudden, and don't worry, we're going to go on your behalf, public, and bash the oil producers because we really need a cleaner environment. Well, at this stage, I think everybody needs to understand that the country is in trouble. We're spending too much on the price of oil and gas. We're in a war with one of the largest gas producers in the world.
National security implications.
Exactly. And if this is a Defense Production Act kind of thing, then that's what it needs to be. But Nancy Pelosi ought to quit trying to play politics with this and have it both ways.
Quickly, Jeannie, does the president need to stop calling it Putin's price hike? Weren't we having this conversation, albeit it went up a lot recently, but before the war?
Yeah, he needs to stop doing it for a variety of reasons. The main one is that it's not only gas going up, it's food, transportation, housing, everything else. People know that. They're not just going to blame Putin for that.
The Putin price hike. Thank you, Rick and Jeannie. They'll be with us for the hour. We'll reassemble the panel after we talk to Tom Close. And let's get real about this. What will it actually mean for supplies and prices? We'll talk to the global head of energy analysis, the Oil Price Info Service, next. This is Bloomberg.
In pursuit of Governor Kathy Hochul's 2022 State of the State Green Bond commitment, the New York Power Authority is preparing to sell $600 million in green transmission revenue bonds to build a thriving and resilient state powered by clean energy. These triple tax-exempt bonds will accelerate the Hochul administration's nation-leading effort to ensure that 70% of the state's electricity comes from renewable sources in its relentless pursuit of carbon neutrality. Invest in the boldest rebuilding of the grid in 40 years and help achieve the forward-looking vision of the New York State's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It is one very important way to ensure for an orderly and just transition to clean energy, creating jobs and fostering a green economy for future generations of New Yorkers. This ad is provided by the New York Power Authority. This ad is not an offer to sell nor a solicitation of an offer to buy bonds. Bonds may only be purchased through a broker in an official statement.
You're a lawyer, and whether you're an in-house counsel or in private practice, it's critical that you ensure your competitive edge with actionable intelligence. Bloomberg Law offers